The sun hung high in the sky, casting a warm glow over the small town. The streets were quiet, peaceful, just another slow afternoon in a place where nothing ever seemed to happen. But that was about to change. A roar echoed down the main street, shaking the calm. The sound grew louder and louder until a group of bikers appeared, speeding through the town. Their engines roared like thunder, and their laughter followed. The young men on the bikes were full of energy, confidence, and a touch of arrogance. They wore leather jackets, sunglasses, and smirks. They had no idea what they were about to encounter. The bikers stopped at a local diner, the kind of place where old-timers and locals gathered to sip coffee and chat. The bikers didn't look like they belonged. They were loud, proud, and ready to take over. Inside, the old man sat at the counter, quietly sipping his coffee. His clothes were simple, his face lined with years of life. He didn't make a sound, didn't look at the bikers, just stared out the window as if he were waiting for something. The bikers noticed him though. They noticed his slow movements, his quiet presence. One of the bikers nudged his friend, and whispered loud enough for everyone to hear. "Look at that guy. He's probably been riding for decades, but he doesn't even look like he knows how to start a bike." The others laughed. They looked at the old man again. Then one biker, feeling bold, leaned in and made a suggestion. "Hey old man," he called out. "How about a race? Think you can keep up?" The old man didn't respond right away. He just took another sip of his coffee. The room went quiet for a moment. The only sound was the clink of the old man's coffee cup against the saucer. The bikers looked at each other, grinning. They knew they had made their point, but now they wanted to see if he would take the bait. One of them, a tall guy with a tattoo of flames on his arm, stood up and swaggered over to the old man. He placed his hands on the counter and leaned in, a smug smile on his face. "Come on, old man," he said, louder this time. "You look like you've seen enough of these roads. How about a race? I'll bet you can't keep up with us." He let out a laugh, clearly thinking the old man would back down. The others, sensing an opportunity to have some fun, joined in. "Yeah, a race. What do you say? You think you're fast enough to challenge us?" The old man looked up at them, his expression calm, his eyes were kind, but there was something about them, a quiet strength that made the bikers pause, even if they didn't know why. For a second, it seemed like he was about to say something, but he didn't. Instead, he slowly set down his coffee cup, took a deep breath, and stood up. The bikers looked him over, surprised by how steady he was on his feet, despite his age. "All right," the old man finally said, his voice low but clear, "I'll race you." The bikers exchanged glances, unsure of how serious he was. Surely he was just joking. The young guys couldn't believe it. What did this old man think he was doing, agreeing to a race against them? One of them laughed again. "You're on, old man. Don't say we didn't warn you. You won't be able to catch up with us." They started to head out of the diner, eager to get the race started. The old man followed them out at a slower pace, but something about his calm demeanor made the bikers hesitate. There was no rush. He wasn't trying to prove anything. He was simply preparing. As they reached the street, the bikers started their engines, the sound loud and powerful. The old man moved toward his bike, but instead of the shiny new machines they were riding, his motorcycle was old, worn but well kept. It had a history. The young men didn't know it yet, but they were about to learn a valuable lesson. The air was thick with excitement, as the bikers revved their engines, the sound vibrating through the quiet town. Their motorcycles were sleek, shiny and powerful, each one built for speed. The old man, however, stood calmly beside his bike. It was nothing like theirs. His was weathered, the paint chipped, and the chrome dull from years of use. It wasn't the latest model, but there was something about it that told the bikers not to underestimate it. Still, they laughed among themselves, assuming it would be an easy win. "You sure you want to do this?" one biker called out, his voice filled with mock concern. "You might need a little more practice, Grandpa." The old man didn't respond. He simply slid his gloves on, adjusted his helmet, and mounted his bike with quiet precision. The bikers exchanged amused glances, eager to show off their skills. "All right," the tall biker from earlier said, "Let's make this quick. We'll race around the block, down Main Street and back." "Ready?" The old man didn't flinch, he just gave a slight nod. The tension in the air grew as the bikers pulled up to the starting line. They were ready to go, their engines growling like hungry beasts. The old man, however, stood still, focusing on the road ahead. His eyes were calm, his hands steady on the handlebars. A few of the bikers glanced at him again, chuckling under their breath. "This is gonna be over in a few seconds," one of them said, grinning. They couldn't imagine this old man keeping up with them, not for a second. The tall biker raised his hand, and with a shout, he dropped it. "Go!" The bikers shot forward like rockets, their tires screeching as they sped down the street. The sound of their engines was deafening, and for a moment, the old man seemed lost in the noise. But then, as the bikers pulled ahead, he twisted the throttle on his own bike. It wasn't fast at first, but it was steady, smooth, almost like he'd done this 1,000 times before. The bikers were already a good distance ahead, their laughter echoing back as they glanced over their shoulders, confident that they'd leave him in the dust. The first corner came up quickly, and the bikers leaned into their turns, pushing their machines to their limits. The old man was still behind them, but there was something different about the way he moved. His bike didn't struggle to keep up, it glided through the turn with the kind of ease that came from years of experience. As the bikers reached the straightaway, one of them looked back to see how far ahead he was. That was when he noticed something strange. The old man was still coming, but he wasn't rushing, he wasn't in a panic, his bike wasn't loud and aggressive like theirs. It was quiet, controlled, almost like he wasn't racing at all. And yet, as they sped down the road, the old man was gaining on them, not by speed, but by steady, relentless focus. The bikers were flying down the street, their engines roaring in full force. The wind whipped through their hair as they leaned into the turns, their eyes focused on the finish line just up ahead. They glanced back, laughing at how far ahead they were, certain that the old man wouldn't be able to catch up. But when they looked back again, something strange was happening. The old man wasn't behind them anymore. He was closer. One of the bikers, a tall guy with a black leather jacket, squinted into the rearview mirror. "What the hell? How is he gaining on us?" he muttered under his breath. The others looked over their shoulders, and sure enough, the old man was there, not far off. They had expected him to fall behind, but instead, his bike was moving smoothly through the turns, his speed steady and controlled. It didn't make sense. The tall biker laughed nervously. "No way, this old guy can't be that fast." But as they zoomed through another bend, the old man was still right there. His motorcycle didn't struggle to keep up, and his movements were fluid, as if the bike and the road were one. The bikers couldn't figure it out. They tried to push harder, twisting their throttles to the limit, but it felt like the more they pushed, the more the old man gained ground. They reached the next stretch of road, a wide open lane, and they opened their bikes up, hoping to put some distance between them and the old man. Their engines screamed as they sped ahead, but even as they accelerated, the old man was right behind them, steady and patient. His bike didn't roar like theirs, but it moved with purpose, like a silent predator. The bikers began to feel it, their pride slipping away. They had underestimated the old man, and now they couldn't shake the feeling that they might lose. The old man wasn't rushing though. He wasn't frantic, he wasn't trying to prove anything, he was simply riding, his eyes fixed on the road ahead, as if he had done this 1,000 times before. The younger bikers, on the other hand, were all over the place. Their excitement had gotten the best of them, and now they were starting to make mistakes. One of them, a biker with a red bandana, leaned too hard into a turn, and found himself skidding off the road slightly. He quickly corrected, but his bike sputtered for a moment, losing speed. The old man, still keeping his smooth rhythm, passed him without a word. It was almost like the young biker wasn't even there. Another biker, seeing his friends struggling, pushed his bike harder, trying to get ahead of the old man. But the more he twisted the throttle, the more his bike began to shake. It was clear something was wrong, but he refused to slow down. Just as he neared the next corner, his tire suddenly popped, sending him veering off course. He managed to keep control, but it was too late. The old man was already past him. With every turn and every mile, the young bikers were losing their edge. They had gone too fast, too reckless, and now they were paying for it. Finally, as they came up to the town square, the finish line just ahead, the old man was right there, no longer behind, but ahead. The bikers slowed as they approached the square, their bikes sputtering and stalling, their engines not as powerful as before. The old man, however, coasted effortlessly across the finish line. He didn't even look back as he rode into the square, coming to a smooth stop. The bikers, panting and frustrated, could only watch as he casually dismounted from his bike and took off his helmet. The bikers pulled up to the finish line, their bikes sputtering and struggling to stay alive. They were out of breath, their adrenaline pumping, but the race was over, and they had lost. They stared at the old man, who had come to a gentle stop, standing by his bike like he had just gone for a casual ride. He wasn't out of breath, his eyes were calm, like he hadn't been racing at all. The bikers, on the other hand, were panting, their hearts still racing from the intense speed. They couldn't believe it. One of the bikers, the same tall guy who had challenged him earlier, slid off his bike, still stunned. "No way," he muttered. "How did you?" The old man didn't answer immediately. He took off his helmet slowly, revealing his face, graying hair, a few wrinkles, and a calm expression that didn't match the chaos of the race. He didn't look like the kind of guy who should be able to outrun them. The bikers stared at him in disbelief. They were waiting for some sort of punchline, some joke that would explain how this had happened, but there was none. The old man was serious. He smiled slightly, then spoke, his voice steady but strong. "I used to race, a long time ago." The bikers blinked, unsure whether they had heard him right. "What do you mean?" one of them asked, still confused. "You're not like, retired or something?" The old man chuckled softly, shaking his head. "I retired long ago, but the love for the road, the feel of the bike, it doesn't go away, it stays with you." The tall biker stepped forward, his face turning a little red. "Wait, are you telling us you were a professional racer?" The old man nodded slowly. "I was. And I still know how to ride. Not just for speed, but for the experience." The bikers stood there in silence, processing his words. They had thought they were racing against an old man who had no idea what he was doing. They had no idea that they had just raced against someone who had been a champion, who had lived and breathed racing for years. The tall biker, feeling a mix of respect and embarrassment, took a deep breath. We had no idea." The old man didn't gloat or rub it in. He simply smiled again, his eyes twinkling with quiet wisdom. "That's the thing with racing. It's not just about the speed, it's about knowing your bike, the road and yourself." The bikers stood around the old man, the weight of his words settling in. They were still trying to process what had just happened, their earlier cockiness replaced with a quiet respect. They had underestimated him, hadn't even bothered to consider who he really was, but now, they saw him differently. The tall biker, still a little embarrassed but filled with curiosity, took a step forward. "You're right," he said, scratching the back of his neck. "We thought we knew it all, but you taught us something. We thought we were fast, but you showed us there's more to it." The old man nodded, his smile never fading. "It's not about being the fastest, it's about understanding the journey, not just the finish line. The road will always be there. You just have to know how to ride it." Another biker, the one who had lost his tire earlier, stepped forward. "Man, I didn't think I'd be learning anything from someone like you, but now, I get it. It's not about showing off, it's about being steady." The old man chuckled softly, climbing back onto his bike. "The ride's what matters. The rest will follow." Without another word, he started his bike, and the sound of the engine was almost peaceful, compared to the loud roars of the younger bikers. They followed him as he rode out of the square, not trying to keep up, but riding side by side with him, each of them gaining something from the experience. The sun began to set, casting a golden hue over the horizon as they rode together. The road ahead was open, and for once, it didn't matter who was in front or behind. They were just riders, sharing the same path. And as they rode into the distance, they knew that the old man had given them something more valuable than speed. He had given them the wisdom of experience.